So we're going to focus on the classroom rebooted. We just heard compelling conversation about cybersecurity, digital threats, and so much more on the global stage, and also drilling down to local. So one of the things really stood out is that national security is taking new shape. And the next generation needs to be prepared to take the helm, and this is where this intersects with education. So consider this, countries like China and India are producing over 1 million engineering graduates each year, while the US our students currently lag behind in critical skills according to the latest national report card. 45% of high schoolers scored below the basic level in math proficiency. This isn't just an educational challenge, it's a strategic imperative. I'm Dawn Lang, and I am a graduate of the Civic Leadership Engagement Program here with the Policy Circle. I'm also an elected official with Hamilton Southeastern Schools, a school district in Fishers, Indiana. And I'm fortunate today to be joined by two leaders who bring both policy expertise and personal perspective on how AI might reboot the American classroom. So welcome. So with us today is Hera Varmah, and she's a board member of the American Federation for Children and a fierce advocate for educational opportunity and innovation. Jenny Clark is the founder of Love Your School and a former member of the Arizona Board of Education. She also adds the perspective of a parent herself, making daily decisions about how technology can and should serve kids. So please join me in welcoming Hera and Jenny. All right, we're going to put your knowledge to the test, okay? So we're going to go start off with a kickoff of a live AI in education quiz. So I'm going to go through some different questions, and I'm going to ask for a raise of hands as we go through each one. So we'll unpack the results after each question and have more conversation. So with our first question, you're going to see it up on the screen. A 2025 study by Junior Achievement USA found that what percentage of teens have used AI to complete school assignments instead of doing the work themselves? Have an idea? How many of you think 30%? Raise your hand. 42%? 55%? 68%? Wow, it's 42%.
It's probably approaching 68.
Fast growing.
So we're going to unpack this with a little discussion. So as I turn to Hera and Jenny, what specific new skills such as AI literacy, data analysis, or digital ethics do you believe are essential for students in an AI-driven world? Let's start. You want to start?
Okay. I think that when it comes to education in general, you have to think about the critical thinking skills that we're going to lose with children just using AI as a crutch. But there's a way to use AI, and I think that that's a big thing that we're going to be talking about today, and like how to decipher when to use it. So I definitely think if they're using things like if they're using it for resources, because a lot of times, even as adults, like sometimes we're writing an opinion piece and you need to pull a resource and sometimes you don't have as much time because you have to get those op-eds out really quickly. To be able to find, articles or resources, that is one way that's useful. So I think if we're teaching our youth how to use AI tools, I think that will make a big difference. But using it as a crutch and using it to kind of do your homework, I guess with the 42 and growing %, that is where you kind of can fall into some trouble.
Jenny?
Well, we wrestle with this in our home. I have 5 children ranging from 7 to 16. And people are often really surprised when I tell them that in our home, and I love technology and my kids do too, that ChatGPT is blocked in our home through our router at the router level. YouTube is blocked in our home, and a lot of things that people would be, I think, surprised about, considering that, as our prior panelists mentioned, like, we love technology, we love all these defense companies, Palantir, Anduril, all those things. But what I'm actually going to argue is that it is not a new set of digital or AI skills that American school children need. It's actually a return to knowledge. I believe that we need to be instructing children That's why I'm a fan of classical education and what is good, what is true, what is beautiful in grammar and logic and rhetoric. And we need to be training our children for higher order, higher level thinking in order to be prepared for the AI age. So that's my perspective. Thank you. And you'll sense that throughout some of my answers. So I'm glad that at least I've got some positive response.
No, I think that's fantastic. So let's jump to question 2. A 2025 study analyzing 150,000 AI citations found that the #1 source of information for AI-generated answers is? How many of you think Google? How many of you think Wikipedia? How many of you think Reddit? How many of you think online textbooks? Well, if you're going to be like me, I was frightened to hear that it's Reddit. So if you stop and consider, how many of you actually use Reddit? This is the #1 source that information is pulled from whenever you use AI. And so if you can imagine the information that is being pulled from that and used in not only for our students for their education materials and resources, but just the fact checking and the data checking. So there's a lot of things that come to mind. So let's unpack this as a conversation. So how can schools ensure that students develop technical competencies like AI literacy and soft skills like critical thinking and collaboration that remain valuable long term? And I think Jenny teed up a great
Yeah, I've
part
prepared so
earlier.
much on this topic, so
Yeah.
I'm looking back at my notes because
Yeah.
I really want to get it right for everyone. So I have the mindset that you cannot be a critical thinker or skilled problem solver without specific knowledge in a subject. And I think that's something we've lost. I saw a great meme actually from a defense tech guy that I follow on X this morning. And I thought, oh, how encouraging that he's sharing this too. And he had 2 pictures. And he was arguing for specific knowledge in order for people to have better reasoning ability. And one was a picture of a man with a flashlight looking out over a huge forest and all the things that he could see with the flashlight that he had. And the other one was the same photo with the flashlight off. And the flashlight is what we want to be giving to kids, and that comes from specific knowledge in specific subjects over time. I think the risk of AI, if kids can even prompt it right, is that they don't have knowledge. They don't even know what to ask or how to ask it, and they're completely losing their ability to understand and what it means to learn. And so that's kind of my caution. I think that AI is going to, and it's going to make the American worker more productive. And so that's a good thing, right? Like an individual could maybe, as an adult, get 10 times more done than they could 10 years ago with an AI. But when we're talking about students, we shouldn't be thinking about terms of productivity. We should be thinking of a deeper level of knowledge and understanding that we need to impart on those kids throughout their K-12 education.
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on the prompt itself. I think that, I mean, in this room, we're going to talk about AI and how we can really train up, I guess, the schools and how to, how are we teaching the kids? What are the curriculums? How are we going to input AI into education? And I think that the real question is, how are we going to give the decision making to the parent? Parents should be at the forefront to decide what type of education that is. And we talk about this all the time in the school choice movement. But there are classical educations, there are Montessori schools, micro schools, your traditional private and public schools, Catholic schools, charter schools. I can keep going on and on and on. And each one of those schools are really individual schools. If you look at Arizona, if you look at Florida, these are the big booming states with all of these choices. And when it comes to education, parents like mine may say, I don't want my children surrounded by AI at all. My mom wanted us to really have critical thinking skills, wanted us to have an imagination, and she always told us never using technology as a crutch. She also never allowed us to use calculators for a long time, which is a bone I have to pick with her. It could have saved me some heartache. But when it comes to what we do with AI, I think we can protect our students if we allow parents to decide. Like you said, Jenny, you are like a no technology household, but someone else that has children that are in like robotics in high school and middle school, they are like surrounded by technology all the time. How can we build robots? I mean, my older brothers are geniuses. One's about to be a doctor and the other one's a mechanical engineer. And they will just debate microwave technology for like hours, and we have to like kick them to another room. But they are really great with technology. I'm a big Jane Austen fan, Ella Montgomery fan. I love reading. I love hard books. I am one of the big fans of like get back to actually having books in our hands. But if my mom would have said no technology at all in our house, well, not no technology, but no technology at all in our education, maybe my brothers would have been crippled by that. But if we put too much for myself and not put us in the right, me in the right schooling environment, then that could have crippled me as well. And I want to caveat that by saying I'm one of 12 in my family, so we have a lot of different learning types.
Wow.
But I think that is important. If you give the decision back to the parent will decide how much AI they want in their child's education based off of what they need.
Interesting. Yeah, striking that balance is interesting. So moving to our next quiz question. According to EdTech Magazine's 2024 survey, what percentage of educators believe AI is useful? And what percentage are actually using it? So, 56%, how many of you think 56%? Raise your hands. How about 65%? 77%? 85%? The answer is 77%. So, how do we train teachers to use AI effectively in their classrooms? And to that end, how should curriculum and instructional models evolve to leverage AI while maintaining proven teaching methods that support learning outcomes? Let's start with you, Hera.
I think I've seen this in going to different schools around Florida, but also around the country when we're visiting schools and seeing how they kind of do things, whether that's a classical school, or that's one of your more traditional religious schools. And what I've seen a lot of teachers, and we actually had this question that we asked a lot of teachers, is how do you use AI technology? And many of them, even our homeschooling parents, they've decided to use AI maybe in like the lesson planning. So they'll put together all like what the curriculum needs to look like, and then AI will kind of organize it for them. So I see a lot of teachers using it for organizational skills, and it kind of cuts down that time in half where they're taking a lot of time planning and they can use that time to actually educate their students. But I do caveat that to say, I mean, too much of anything could be bad to especially our educators. If they're actually implementing like AI use in the classroom where they're telling their students like, okay, we're writing an essay and we're actually going to figure out ways to use AI to write our essays, I think that wouldn't be useful. But I think there's ways that we cut down time for our teachers, and I think this is something that could be implemented where teachers go through trainings on how to use AI. But it's the same. I think it's kind of like the phones. Every generation has to continue to keep figuring out when Apple has an update 5 times a year. Yeah. How are we going to, use it and not let it overtake our lives? And so I think I think that's what I would say to that question.
Well, I think that I'm old enough now to remember when Chromebooks were the next big thing, right? And if we could just get every kid a Chromebook with the latest educational apps. And a lot of those apps are made by good, hardworking American citizens, which is why it makes it so hard, right, to sometimes critique these things. If we could just give them all a Chromebook, we would see the educational outcomes and attainment of American school children just skyrocket. But in actuality, we haven't seen that. We've probably seen more children exposed to pornography who wouldn't have access to it through Chromebooks in the classroom, and then of course a lot of times they get to take them home. They have very few restrictions on them. So I would like to see in the classroom more direct instruction, and to your point, if there is a way that an adult who is educated in a subject, let's say they're teaching Romeo and Juliet, and the adult who has been educated is like, gee, I need to come up with 5 more questions for this test exam. They as an adult are using it, and they are able to filter whether or not what is returned from a search function or a ChatGPT is appropriate, and then they're using that for the student in the classroom. I think that's a big time saver. I could also see it being used by special needs teachers in the production of IEPs. That's something I'm really interested in, and how they can do better goals for students. But that's at the adult level with knowledgeable people who know how to sift through what is being used. My biggest fear with AI actual use in the classroom, which we're seeing more and more of that, and my kids have used some AI technology at home, which I'll share about later, is what is put out and what is produced with these large LLMs. And I think it's important to point out, it was just about a year ago, November, that there was a student, yes, younger college student, who was doing some research on ChatGPT for a paper, and essentially what was produced was a paragraph essentially telling the kid to kill himself. That happened, and it took that kid 24 hours to process what happened and tell somebody else. So there are a lot of risks with teachers using AI and students using AI. I do think there's some ways they can be used, but I'm just more a fan of direct instruction and following the curriculum that the district and the school has agreed upon and set out.
Interesting. Moving on to the next question. Let me go back to that first question. Bear with me. In a recent 2024 survey, what percentage of students reported feeling unprepared for an AI-enabled workforce? How many of you think 48%? Raise your hand. How about 58%? How about 68%? 78%? The answer is 58%. So, turning this into a discussion, how do you see AI-driven changes in education shaping students' readiness for the workforce? And how will society be altered as a result?
This is a good question, and I think I grapple with this question because I've always been the one that's for technology use, but with having guardrails around it. But when I look at students in the workforce, a gentleman earlier talked about the Chinese AI that's called, what is it called? DeepSeek. And one of my brothers, that's a mechanical engineering student at Florida State University, he uses this a lot when he has to do a problem and maybe the professor has one way of breaking it down. And then he's when he gets back to his room, he's I really didn't understand that. And sometimes it's he's at the engineering campus and it's late at night, and it's a really great tool for tutoring. And we've even used it for some of my other siblings that struggle in calculus and math in high school. But I think it also depends on the industry. I think, again, like I said, if you cater everything to one specific type of student, I think you're gonna fail many students. There's some industries that don't need AI, and maybe they need it to maybe organizational skills, but that's something that can be picked up really easily. I have a sister that's in events and marketing, and I wouldn't necessarily say that she needs to actually study AI skills when she's in school, but someone like my older brother, where they're constantly looking for new technology as chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers, how can we create different technology that can speed up the process, because we as society are moving faster and faster. That is very useful, but I don't think for the whole, you have students that are maybe in more classical degrees, and again, I think too much of this will take away from that critical thinking, that imagination that children do have, which is very useful as adults. We do this all the time when we're brainstorming, and if we use AI to just brainstorm, we'll start using it as a crutch, and I think a lot of these great ideas we've had will start to dwindle, and I think that will become a problem, but it's definitely still useful for some students.
I think these students are probably feeling unprepared because a good percentage of them can't even read proficiently. That's pretty much what I think.
That's a good point.
I think that the nation's report card, and specifically for those of you who are in Arizona, this is something that I'm trying to work very deeply on. We're in a crisis, okay? Yep. Even in Arizona, only a third of fourth graders are reading proficiently at grade level. Mm-hmm. That is a total crisis. I do not think the solution for that is more AI or even talking about AI with these kids. Again, I think it's training kids in the foundational basics of grammar and logic and rhetoric. And my opinions on this have been very shaped, I will say, for anyone who's interested, in a lot of the works by George Gilder and the Discovery Institute, and also Mind Matters, mindmatters.ai. I was reading a bunch of their articles again last night before I came here, and I found a really good quote that I wanted to read to everyone that summed up a lot of kind of what I view about students and the human mind and education, and it's from George Gilder, and it says, "AI will make people more productive and thus more employable. It will create newer and safer and more interesting work. It will generate the capital to endow new companies and new ventures as new technologies have done all throughout history. What it will not do is create a mind." And that is what I am concerned about for America and for American school children, is the cultivation and understanding of the human mind. You know, the data that I read recently was actually even higher about the number of STEM grads that China's graduating. I read that it was 2.7 million to our 800,000 STEM grads. And I don't care. I am not trying to create a hard little Chinese worker citizen. That is not what I'm trying to do. I want to create kids who know how to think and have moral reasoning and know what it means to be human when they're coming up against those Chinese students deciding whether or not to drop a bomb or engage in something very nefarious. That's what I want for American school children.
Can we? I wanted to also stay on this topic because I think you made a great point, but I think in that point, when you give parents options, they will decide how much of this they want in their child's curriculum. I mean, we can sit here all day and talk about like the curriculum and what we would structure in like your normal system. But let's look at like Miami-Dade County. Over 75% of Miami-Dade, which is a large county in the state of Florida, over 75% of the students go to other than their zone school. And even the former superintendent that's now a superintendent in California, he said back in like 2013, if we don't get on this train of choice and make our schools competitive for parents to choose us as an option, they're gonna leave us behind. And so when I look at the discussions of AI, and we see it on Twitter, we see it, X, and you see it on the news and everyone's talking about it, I think if we continue to give parents the options, like we do in Arizona, like we do in Florida, and the flexible options, they are the ones that will determine how much of this the child needs in the education. And in that, you've seen scores change, scores turning around. So I think, yes, let's talk about AI, but we also need to talk about parental involvement in that.
And I agree with you. I agree with you completely. And some of you may not know that school choice is my area of expertise. That is my work. That is what I'm passionate about. I have fought vigorously for schools that utilize AI to open and launch in Arizona, Alpha School, Novatio, Unbound Academy, all of that, because I want parents to have those options and I want them to have those choices. I'm here in front of all of you, so it's like my chance to give that higher level order thinking that I'm the most passionate about. And so while I am a huge fan of school choice, and I absolutely will fight to defend every parent's opportunity to be in one of those AI-powered schools, I think broadly speaking, I'm trying to make a larger point about higher level thinking and the value of classical education in this conversation around AI. But I agree with you on school choice, 100%.
And that's also why when I say parents deciding like, okay, my brother that's a chemical engineer, like DeepSeek is like a tool. If you don't know, a lot of engineers are using it, even if they tell you they're not using it. But it's very useful for them to do certain things that they may not remember from university. But even in your robotics classes, there's a lot of students that are using it still. And so I do think this is where having guardrails is really important, because we could say that about all the technology that we've passed over the years. And my mom's she's usually really against our social media. She's like, there's too much social media. Everyone needs to get off social media. But it's useful in certain ways, and we use it all the time in the movement. So there's ways that it's useful, but I have your fear as well. I do. But this is why I say parents, if parents are in control, it can kind of resolve some of those fears.
Well, what's interesting, so in the state of Indiana, we really are focusing on, we've changed our K-12 education so that the graduation requirements now are really focusing on pathways. So whether it's a higher education pathway, whether it's a workforce pathway, or a military pathway. And so the structure of the state and the K-12 education system has that mindset now that when you look at AI and the importance of the workforce, even SHRM had a recent survey where they polled top executives, and 83% of them said that AI is foundational to workforce preparedness. So as much as we try to protect and isolate, the future within the workforce is saying it's critical. It's becoming a new literacy, a form of literacy. So as we start to shape students' readiness for the workforce, AI has to become a component of this. And while we want to protect, and I think everything that the negative aspects of AI, the positive aspects are already being utilized and embedded in the workforce, and that's trickled down into education, not only higher ed, but definitely K-12, especially as we see it in the state of Indiana. So I think it's become the next great literacy. Teaching AI fluency is no longer just an option. Let's move to the next question. Question number 5. Actually, it's probably 6. Yep, 5. In 2024, Common Sense Media found that what percentage of parents support government regulation of AI technologies used in schools to protect children? 35%, raise your hand. 51%? 72%? 84%. Those of you who said 72% are correct. So how should regulators, school boards, and families work together to set guardrails while still encouraging innovation that prepares students for the future?
Yeah. Well, broadly speaking, which may be surprising to some of you, I don't support government regulation of AI. And let me explain a little bit there. I believe that we are in a race not to win, because nobody really knows what winning looks like in the AI race, but we are in a race to lead against China. And that's very important for us as adults in the room to know and acknowledge and understand. And when we have states making all sorts of different rules in different ways about AI and over-regulating, I think that's a problem. We need to be leading when it comes to AI and new technologies. Now, when it comes to, in the classroom, I think that's a little bit of a different story. But similar to what we were talking about before, I think that parents and educators and school boards need to be deeply discussing these types of issues and topics. Mm-hmm. My fear is that the average parent, the average adult, mostly because so many of us work and we have a lot of kids and we're just trying to get by and live our lives, that a lot of us don't actually understand the dangers around regular AI use at home and in the classroom, and kind of what it does to the brain and how it limits the foundational building blocks of knowledge for kids. But we do need to have those conversations. And again, if there's an entire school district in Arizona and the parents there have worked hard and lobbied and they're having, monthly meetings around AI, and they've decided they're okay for every student to be able to use ChatGPT to write their papers and do those types of things, I want them to have the freedom to do that and make those choices. My argument is that I don't think that's good for American school children in general, and I wouldn't choose that for my children. But I want them to have the right to do that. I do just fear that they don't understand the depth of potential dangers around it, just like what I mentioned with Chromebooks. I can't tell you how many moms I've talked to who had no idea that their child was even seeing pornography as a result of a Chromebook. It's absolutely devastating, and it's devastating how young that happens too. So those are the things we have to think about.
Well, I definitely agree. I think the only thing I would add on to that is, this is my pitch to you all in this room, you lovely ladies, is that even if you have children that are school age, or you don't have children that are school age, or you're about to start a family, getting involved in education policy, learning at your local level, your school board, it's like basically like your pitch, but school board, getting involved in advocacy, making sure you're aware of, I guess, the maybe bills that are maybe coming up on education policy and how that's going to affect your students. Because I myself don't have children, but I'm always advocating for the ones that don't have a powerful voice. And I mean, I'm in school choice and giving parents choice, but I think in giving parents choice, we want to hear from parents. So even if you're not parents or grandparents, getting involved, really showing your opinion, because this is something it's coming at us whether we like it or not. Mm-hmm. And so there are going to have to be guardrails put in place, and who better to do it than the ones in this room? So that's my pitch to you all.
Very
exactly.
Good. Very good.
As a parent, I echo a lot of the sentiments that these women have communicated up here. I also represent a public school district of 21,000 students in the state of Indiana. And so as we look at the impact of technology and the choices and the accessibility. As a district, we are obligated to provide that. And I think it's incumbent upon us as school board members to ensure that there's policies in place. Currently in our district, there's not. And so it's a conversation to have, and I think even at the state level, there's nothing in discussion yet. The beauty of our superintendent in our district is that he also sits on the State Board of Education. He's a board member. So at least we have a pulse on what's going on in the education space in our state. But I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. And in the preparation, the materials that I've read for this, it's accelerating. AI use is accelerating at rates that I don't think that we all truly in the room understand. And our kids are using it. In fact, when we think about AI, it's not just ChatGPT and Grok and all the tools. AI is embedded in Microsoft Office. AI is embedded in Meta. So every social media platform you're using, AI is embedded in it. It's in your phone. So AI is already everywhere. You're already using it whether you realize it or not. So it becomes really important on now what do we do with that, right? How do we unpack it? How do we teach our kids and our students how to use it in the right way, prompt and ask the right questions, because it's all about pulling the right data and information and fact checking now that we know that it's coming from Reddit. So I think that that's critically important is how we educate and inform, and then even looking at it from a teacher perspective, the efficiencies that are built around it, but how are we informing and educating our teachers? Our teachers are teaching our students, so how they're learning and what they're learning is just as important. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there for certainly more dialogue. As we close out, I just want to highlight that the Policy Circle has AI Education Insights. Please download it. If you've never checked out our policy briefs, highly recommend you do so. They are the most informed piece of information you will ever come across, with hyperlinks to every potential site that you would never have thought to look into, and provide you with fantastic information and data. And I encourage you to get involved in CLEAR, the leadership program here with the Policy Circle. You'll find it highly invaluable. So thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Hera. And thank you all so much for joining us today.